Hello everyone, back again, another year for our top 10 books that we read in 2024. If you missed it, we already did our top 10 video games 2024, and we'll also be doing our movies. So I think you went first and last one, right?
I have no idea.
Pretty sure you did. It's for video games. So I will go first for one we both read, The Wager, A Tale of Shipwreck, Mutiny, and Murder. One that you read first earlier this year and said I should check it out. And it was a great adventure, and I love books that are nonfiction that don't take the dry textbook route, turn it into what feels like almost like a fictional story, like the style of adventure, the style of the writing. So I thought that was really good. That was my number 10.
And you really like the author too.
Yes.
We both like the author. My number 10 is not a good book. I would not recommend it.
Is it Ari?
But it is Ari, but I love her. She has a YouTube channel. I think she's more prolific on TikTok, honestly, but I love her. And she came out with a book. It's not really her book, but it's called Happiness Cleaning. It's really badly translated, and it really doesn't go into a ton of anything, but she's just such a joyful person, and I just had really a great time reading it. So that's why it makes it higher than it really should. Which is what happens in this list, because this is not the best books.
It's just your personal enjoyment sometimes.
Yes, exactly.
If you want to hear more in-depth thoughts about this trilogy, check out my Star Trek channel if you haven't already, because I just recently did a review talking about this trilogy. We have the Legacies trilogy, which was a trilogy that was written by a group of authors to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. So a little while ago, I just had never read them myself, but they were a pretty good story. It just felt that they were a little uneven. You have David Mack did the second one, Dayton Ward and Kevin Dillmore did the third one, and then Greg Cox did the first one, and I felt like they were uneven. And maybe it's just I like one writer more than the other, but I felt like, to me, I really loved the first one a lot, and I just liked the second and third one. So it's still enjoyed them, but my number 9.
And those are more recent Star Trek books, aren't they?
Oh, well, the 50th, so a little while ago.
My number 9 is a decent book, but I feel like Stefan always says, as I get older, I really just want like a standalone, nothing like crazy epic, just like a fun.
And that's harder to find within that genre, fantasy.
Fantasy is one of my favorite genres, and it's so hard, especially now, I think, finding just like a basic, like fun escapism. And that's what this was. This was just called Thistledown. It's just your standard fantasy, one-off, and I love that. And sometimes you need that. Just like mass market paperback, which I feel like they don't make anymore.
Yeah, well, if you do find something like that, it tends to be like young adult stuff.
Yes, that's the other
problem.
thing.
Yeah.
Having an adult book.
That's just a one-off fantasy.
Just like something for me. And like, it's better that, like, again, it's higher than it should be because I just enjoyed that so much because it's such a hard thing to find now, I feel like.
Yeah. My number 8, the most recent Firefly book, just came out, Aim to Misbehave. I really enjoyed this one. Like all the other really good ones, it truly feels like it gets the voice of the characters down. It feels like a missing episode of the show. Like they took a script of an episode and fleshed it out to be a novel. That's what it felt like. So it was really good. So that made
I hope they come out with more of those.
Yeah.
I really do, because that's just, they're so good. My number, what are we at?
That was my 8, so you're 8.
My number 8 is The Watchers by A.M. Shine. This just came out as a movie, which
That was not good.
not very good.
I watched that with you.
But
You had me watch
the book
that.
version was, as per usual, much better. They actually came out with a sequel not long ago, which I might have to check out. I don't know. But this was fun. This was like a nice thriller, a drama. I liked it. Not as much as you didn't like it at all.
No,
But
no.
that's fine. I enjoyed it. It was a fun time.
My number 7 right now, 7. I have Mudding Your Eye, a Star Trek original series novel that I had not checked out before, and I felt more so than some of the other stories I've read where Harry Mudd comes back, this one truly felt like it got the tone of the character and the comedy sense of the character right. Sometimes that's hit or miss with the return of the character, but this one in particular I was really happy to find. It was very enjoyable.
Is that one the number?
Yes, number 81.
Oh, okay. Those are always so weird to me because there's so many and they're so different.
Yeah, oh yeah.
My number 7 is nonfiction. I had a lot of nonfiction for me on the top 10 because I Nonfiction's
Yeah,
hard.
I tend to have
It's
more.
hard
I
for
tend to
me
have more on the
because
list.
I tend to watch. I think listen more. It's more documentaries and like podcasts.
Yeah, I
or,
tend
like,
to
true
read
crime
more
and, like,
nonfiction. You tend to listen to more
I listen
nonfiction.
to more nonfiction,
Yeah.
but this is The Professor and the Madman: A Tale of Murder, Insanity, and the Making of the Oxford Dictionary, because all those things go together. This you got from a thrift store,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
I just picked it out of your pile to list, and I read it, and it's a really, really quick read, which I really like when it comes to nonfiction. And it's just like bizarre, and it's one of those like, what do you mean you made the Oxford English Dictionary with a crazy murderer man? And that's what it is. And it's just an interesting idea. Like, it's just an interesting story. And history's weird. History's weird. You didn't read this one, did
No,
you?
I did not.
But decent. Decent. What do you
My
think?
number 6, another nonfiction, we have Dick Van Dyke, My Lucky Life in and Out of Show Business, a memoir, which I forget when this was written, but we need an update because he's still kicking, 99. One of my all-time favorite entertainers, and just it was a joy to read his life story in his own words, and it was just a really, really fun, enjoyable book.
I actually also have a memoir. Again, more nonfiction. This is weird. It's really weird. This is Born with Teeth, Kate Mulgrew's story, which is nonfiction, but I don't know how much of this is actually true, because she's definitely...
Hearing you talk about it, that you might see that on my list next year, because I'll see how much I like it, because I want to read that next year.
It was more enjoyable than it should have been because of the way she tells the stories, but the way she tells them is very weird, and I don't believe half of this. Like, I think she's going to tell you what she wants to tell you and skip all the things she doesn't want to tell you, and that's fine. She's not a reliable narrator, but it made it more interesting. So I don't know that I know more about her now, but I don't know. It was entertaining. It was an entertaining time. So.
My number 5 was a bit of a surprise for me. We have Star Trek Picard, The Last Best Hope, by Una McCormick. Yep.
Yeah.
And I picked this up on a whim. I think I found this at a thrift store.
I think that was thrift store,
It was a thrift store find, and it takes place before the beginning of the Picard series, which I'm very mixed on, especially those first 2 seasons. So I was like, I don't know, and so I checked it out, and I really liked it, and I felt like this actually got across some of the stories that are what build up to the series of Picard better than the series even did it. So this was a really good book. I talked about that on the Star Trek channel as well.
I think you've been reading more of the modern Trek stuff that's been coming out
Yeah,
lately,
that's why there's a lot more Star Trek on my list this year than normal, because I've been reading a lot of newer, like came out that I haven't read, and then those handful that, I guess there's hundreds and hundreds in the past that I've gone back and read.
It's just such an overwhelming thing for me to even like I've read random things, but just to get into that is so...
There's a lot.
So overwhelming. My number, what are we at? 5 is I think this is a young adult series. This was actually picked up by Disney to be a movie, which I would have loved to see, and they haven't said anything in several years, so I'm assuming this was like canned. But it's the Paper Magician series. It has 4 books, and this was just interesting. This was just, again, just a fun time. I wish it was more adult, but I feel like that's usually how I feel with the young adult stuff, is that it's very surface, and it could have gotten better. It really kind of fell apart for me in the last couple, but the beginning ideas were great. It just was definitely for young adults, which makes me sad. But it would have made teenage Amanda very happy. I really would have liked that.
Yeah. All right, my number 4. This was my book on the plane on the way to Germany this summer. We have Devil's Bargain, a TOS novel that I loved because it got into the culture of the Horta. If you know the Devil in the Devil in the Dark from TOS, in a way that to a level that has never really been done before, and was just a great Star Trek story in its own right. So I really enjoyed that, and that it felt like it was something that brought something original to the table, which is hard to do in an original series novel. So I thought that was really good.
Is that more recent?
Yeah, this one's definitely more recent.
Okay.
Yeah, as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, this one's I think like 2013 or 2014.
Okay,
so yeah.
Very recent. My number 4 is another series. This is the Hazelwood and the Night Country. Just a duology again. I don't know why that's been more popular recently. Another young adult one, but really good, based more on like fairy tales and not alternate dimensions, but other realities. It was fun. It would have been much better if it was for adults.
Yeah.
And I would have liked it much more if it were for adults, but alas, it is not.
My number 3, the most recent Star Trek book, actually one that just came out very recently, Strange New Worlds Asylum. I did a review on that as well because I thought this was a fantastic book that I think did even better justice than a whole lot of the Strange New Worlds show to the concept and the characters of Strange New Worlds. So this was, I highly praise this one of my favorite books of the year.
My number 3 is a book I just finished reading, and I thought it looked really funny. It was Assistant to the Villain, and it's about a lady who's an assistant to a villain, and it's kind of like fairy tale world, and the main character is assisting the villain, and it's very funny. And I think it's young adult, but it skews more like older young adult, which I feel like okay, it's better.
It sounds like it was humorous.
It was very funny, and it was a really good time, and I was really excited. And then about halfway through, I realized there's another one, and I got really angry. But it's not a really angry thing. So I do have the second one, and the third one I believe is coming out sometime next year. So I'm sure this is going to be on my list next year. Hopefully, maybe. Sometimes it falls apart, but really, really funny series. I would actually recommend this, even though I don't know. It's like kind of like on the precipice of being young adult and being not. I don't know. It's such a weird genre.
Speaking of humorous, not really. We have not really. We have my number 2, A Nation in Torment: The Great American Depression, 1929 to 39.
And look how big, and it's like a textbook.
This was a beast. Yeah, it had that kind of vibe to it. But this is one of my favorite time periods in history to explore.
Happy. Like such a joyful
it's very,
time.
very depressing, very dour. But I love a lot of the culture of the time and things that came out through the necessity and the lack of just resources and what came out. Like I think a lot of one of the best decades ever for movies is the 30s. There's a lot in that time period. I like a lot of the music. There's so much interesting stuff that came out of there, and it's a fascinating period of time. And just what came after the Gilded Age and after World War I, and then in that time period leading up then to what would plant the seeds for eventually World War II, and just how the American Depression really changed the world. And it was a fascinating time period. So I've read other stuff before, but this one in particular was one of the best examples for me as a great overview of that time period. So I really enjoyed that. It's my number 2.
Just America, I'm assuming?
Well, yeah, that's the focus. I mean, it talks a little bit about how it affected, but it's more focused. Yeah.
My number 2 is actually nonfiction again, which is really shocking. I loved this author. You got me to read him the first time with was it Lost City of Z?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And oh my gosh, that was amazing. And there's a third book that he wrote that I really wish I was interested in because I love the way he writes. This is David Grann's The Wager. I love these people. They are so real and so funny. Because I feel like most of the time when you think of people from the past, like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, they're like super boring and they're like super proper and like
people were just people.
These were just people, and like at one point these guys are drunk, their ship is sinking, and they are like dressed up in like the like treasure, like the uniforms, and they're like shooting cannonballs and stuff at each other, and they're hilarious, and they definitely ate each other. This was such a great book. The only complaint I have about this book is that it happened again. My binding, we have 2 copies because we got another one to replace this one, but I don't know. Is anyone else having this problem with new books? Because I'm really upset. Like, who's doing this? And like, it needs to stop.
I regularly dig books out of the bottom of Goodwill bargain bins
from
that are 100. Yeah, they're like 120 years old, and they're sitting literally in trash, and they're in better shape than stuff that's printed in 2024.
And it makes me so sad because like there's no reason for this. This does not cost that much more, but this is a fantastic book. I love it so much, and I would definitely recommend. But not this copy because it's going in the trash.
My number 1, by a wide margin, I loved it. Strangely, is an audiobook. I'm not
that's how you could get it.
It's normally audiobooks. Like, how does that even count? I don't know. But I'm not a huge audiobook person. But there are so many great interpretations or unique stories within stuff like Star Trek for audiobooks, and this in particular, just that came out this year, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, A Stitch in Time, which was written and then finally came out read by the actor who plays Garrick and the author of the book, Andrew J. Robinson.
That's
this
really
audiobook, cool. It was incredible, and this was a Deep Space Nine book that I've always wanted to read, but that particular book is like a $200-300 used paperback. So I've never had a chance to read it because that's crazy.
Yes.
When most Deep Space Nine paperbacks are like $5. Like that's a huge
like
gap.
$7
You know what I mean? Like but like the difference is crazy. So
yes.
Finally got to experience the story. The excitement was just the build up to it was incredible. The performance was remarkable and really just helped. If you have the person who played the character who wrote the book, then reading the book through the like they created, it brought it to life, and it was remarkable. It was the best experience I had with a story this year. Just fantastic.
When you said that, really added to the character and
oh yeah, it
everything
adds
so
much, and it ties into so many things that I've read. Obviously, Deep Space Nine books that take place way past that point in time, but it added even more to them, and just gave such a great insight into one of my all-time favorite characters. So
my number one is not a surprise.
No.
It was kind of a guaranteed
no,
thing.
My brown coat.
I'm just so happy. Like, it's just a gift. I say this every year, but this is just, it's a gift from the Lord. It's... You okay?
Yeah.
It's Firefly, Aim to Misbehave, and it's just, I love it so much, and I'm so happy, because the last one was not the greatest. I think I had more of a problem than you did with it.
I still thought it was one of the weaker ones.
It was definitely one of the weakest ones.
It wasn't Generations, like it was, yeah.
And they redeemed themselves, and it was great. I wish that it had better quality. The original couple were like so nice. And I mean, the only people that are going to be reading this are people who would pay $50. So like, just make it nicer again, and I'll pay more money. But I hope they make more. I really hope they make more, because this was so good. It's so good, and I can't recommend it, because if you haven't watched Firefly and you're not a fan of Firefly, don't read this. There's no reason for that.
I think those books in general really are. If you want more, you watch Firefly and you really just want more of it, perfect.
And like,
perfect.
I was looking, there are almost as many books now as episodes of the actual show.
It's close.
It's like, I think 4 or 5 off.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. So eventually, this is going to be bigger than the actual series, which is crazy. And I really, really hope they make more. I really, really hope there's nothing yet. But I feel like there's not usually anything.
You never know. Yeah, it's usually until like a few months beforehand.
I'm really hoping. This got delayed, and it was a whole thing, but so worth the wait. But if you guys know of any books or movies or video games that we should be playing or watching, please let us know, because I want recommendations. I don't know if you do, but I do.
Yeah, especially based off of what you see that we read this year. Is there anything in a similar vein that you would suggest?
Yes, please.